All right, what is happening, everybody? Welcome back to the Bucher's Batch of Boys podcast, episode 5. I'm your lovingly endearing host, Nick Bucher. This is my partner, my life partner, Kyle Jordan. How are you?
Doing great. Pumped to be on the pod again, Nick.
Yeah, and we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot going on. We're 2 or so weeks into the season now, 2 weeks and change. And we were just talking in the pre-show here. There's a decent amount that has not changed because it's a long season. Baseball is a marathon. It is not a race. But also, while you cannot win your league in April, you can lose it in April. And we will go over pretty early on here some moves we've been seeing, some starts we do or don't believe in. But there are some moves that I've seen where I feel like, ooh, you might be losing your league in April.
There
We'll see
have
what
been some
happens.
big ones. I mean, there have been some big drops, some decent sized names dropped off of rosters. There have been some trades.
There has
And
been.
and Nick, actually, we did see a rule broken for the first time. I didn't know how I felt about it today. We're recording on the 10th here. But for the first time, I noticed a trade where both parties were not Nick or Kyle. There,
Oh,
there were
yeah.
new
Hold on.
new people involved in a trade. So just as a quick reminder, as a
Great call
league
out.
that's not really allowed.
That's not how
Uh,
it's supposed to work.
yeah. So just keep that in mind. Make sure to get into
That's
contact with.
strike one for, just because Kyle did say, strike one, Zach. Strike one, Griffin.
Yeah.
You're on notice. We're paying attention. You can do a 3-team trade if you want, or a 4-team trade if you want to involve both of us, just to make sure you really cover your bases there. But moving forward, do not trade without one of me or Kyle present.
Yeah, just treat it as like a sales tax, like just some sort of relief pitcher like goes to me. I'm collecting relief pitchers. So
The
just,
government needs their share.
yep, yep. Yeah. So just wanted to call that out on the front.
And it's a great segue. Why don't we start out, Kyle? Why don't we run through the trades that have happened since our last pod? So I want to say when we had Roman on last time, we had what date was that? Was that the April 5th?
Yeah, it was
We
either the 4th or the 5th. Yeah, it
okay.
was it was early last
Well, let's
week.
work
Last
backwards.
week.
Let's start because we talked about Zach and Griffin already. What are your thoughts? I'll start with you here, just because I'm opening up here. Brian
Yeah.
Anderson and Aaron Nola leave Team Griffin and go to Team Striali, and Team Griffin takes on Max Fried and Ji-Wan Bae.
So we'll be reviewing a few trades today, and this is the blockbuster of them all. I'm really shocked. I think overall, I'll stay composed here, Nick. But I've been ridiculed as the Griffin lover of the pod. I've just been kind of
The lover of
all
Griffin.
over him. I bring him up even when I don't mean to, and I've got to say Zach just dominated this trade in my opinion. He got a $44 Aaron Nola and Brian Anderson in exchange for $16 Max Fried. Now, obviously, you got to love a $16 Max Fried. I was trying to trade for Max Fried myself. I think there's a great value there from a keeper perspective. I think it's just a hamstring injury. It can be a little tweaky, but I do like his odds of coming back very soon and performing at a high level. However, Aaron Nola is one of the best starting pitchers in baseball. Like, I, I just think that the value, like, we're not at parity here. Like, I just feel like Aaron Nola is that much better. So I do think this is a little bit of a one-sided trade. Sorry, Griff.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Kyle. I think it makes sense if you're trading in a similar tier or a tier underneath to definitely go ahead and take that much more easy to digest keeper value. But also Aaron Nola, I mean, we praised him after the draft because I want to say he went for something in the 40s. I mean, it's not impossible. Yeah, $44. So $49 is a lot. I'm not sure you're definitely keeping him, Zach, but I don't even think it's off the table. You could keep him next year for one. And I agree with you, Kyle. Like, I think Max Fried is good. Max Fried's definitely someone who's going to help your team, and he's definitely the more keepable option as far as what palatability goes. But I would rather have Aaron Nola right now. There's no guarantee Fried's definitely back, even though he's probably back soon. There's no guarantee he's back, and even if he is, what if he's a little bit worse for a few starts? There's a lot of ways here. This does not end up being SP10 and SP19. There's a lot of ways I feel like it ends up being SP like 8 and SP 34, which
Yes.
again doesn't necessarily make it a terrible move, but it's a move I probably wouldn't have made. So I think Zach did a good job here. I think also I don't want to completely miss the boat on Bae and Anderson. Brian Anderson, look, his last 2 years, his Statcast numbers have not been great. And it's been, again, even with those numbers too, 2 years since we've seen him put up good stats. But he's in the best ballpark for hitting he's been in for a little while, playing for Milwaukee. Good eligibility there. And so far in his short start, his numbers look good. And again, he's in a better ballpark. So I think Brian Anderson's going to have good utility all season. Bae, I understand, especially now that we just saw the unfortunate O'Neal Cruz thing, probably will play regularly. But I think in a 5 outfielder league with 13 teams, Brian Anderson has very few avenues where he's not going to be at least useful for most of the year, or if not all of it. Whereas I could see Bay, because there's no real pedigree there, he could fall off a little bit here. There's a little bit of pedigree, I suppose. I shouldn't be too mean to him, but I think even when you take out the first two players involved, though, I prefer Anderson to Bay.
Yeah, I was about to say Jaiwan Bay is not a nothing burger, but I think Brian Anderson is probably better. And I did not write down their values from a keep perspective, so that might be something I'm missing. But I would also prefer Brian Anderson. And so yeah, it's crazy. Like I know I rely on the bat and bat X a little bit too much from Derek Carty. And I don't actually believe this, but if you do rank roughly based on the bat for starting pitchers, Aaron Nola was actually my third overall pitcher for the year. So I had Cole, Burns, and then Nola. So it's just like Fried is up there. He is one of my favorite pitchers as well, but I just think it's a completely different tier.
I agree. And I think, again, Fried is not, I think, injury prone, but all pitchers are somewhat injury prone until they're not, basically. And Nola is one of the few guys, though, who in a league that rewards going deep with quality starts, in a league that rewards lots of guys who put up Ks with a starts limit for the season, guys who pitch deep into games, Nola has done for the last like 5 or so years now, pretty consistently after a little bit of injury concerns his first years in the league. He's been pretty durable. Like I think it's very likely he's in the fifth or so most likely pitcher to go 200 innings. I don't think many guys are likely to get that far, but honestly, outside of like Garrett Cole, who has been a horse for like 7 or 8 years now, I don't know if there's anybody I think is definitely less likely to get hurt. So I feel like you have the better pitcher there, you have more stability there. Again, I don't want to be too critical of Griffin, just because I see why you would want the better keeper value. It will look really silly if Aaron Nola gets hurt next year, and then all of a sudden it's, oh, well, I have the younger pitcher, the more keepable pitcher. There's ways this works out for Griffin.
That's
But
true. Yep.
to sum it up, I would not have made the move, and I think Zach just took Griffin out back and kind of like railed him in the butt a little bit there. It's just not great. Like,
Yeah, and with that said, I think we also just have to give Zach some credit. I think Zach has a really good roster currently. Looking at the standings, he's in fourth place. This could easily be Zach's year if a couple of things goes away. So
we
kudos
talked
to
about
you.
it with Roman last week. I said I think Zach is the exact same structure over the last 2 or 3 years. I feel like that McTaggart was on before he just took off last year and took over the league. So
Yep.
I feel like Zach is maybe this is his coming out party.
Yep.
Let's segue to the next trade though that happened also today. Busy morning for our league here, or I guess morning/afternoon for you guys on the East Coast. On those West Coast guys, they were both basically morning moves. Other one though was Kyle and Sparky. So Kyle, I'll assess it some too, but I would first like to hear just from your perspective. Obviously, you think it's at least a 50-50 or a favoring you side here. What goes on here with Giancarlo Stanton coming to your team for Lane Thomas of the Nationals and Drew Rasmussen?
Well, I always tread carefully when dealing with Sparky. The last trade I made with him was actually just a 1-for-1. Devin Williams for Joey Gallo last year. I was the one who picked up Joey Gallo. So it didn't work out so hot for me. And I also fear in some capacity that I'm just getting this temporary power from Sparky. That's like his thing. He just sends it over to me and they die. But
Yeah,
but
do magic.
with all seriousness, I was talking to Mark just a little bit about it. I actually wasn't really trying to shop Drew Rasmussen at first. I was pushing a couple of other pitchers, but he did like Drew the most. He is one of my guys this year, so I do think he will continue to ball out. But just evaluating my roster, Nick, I did realize I did need more power. It was a priority. I'd been trying to address it to some extent on the waivers, but I did want to get just a little bit more of a top dog quality guy. So hopefully I've got that in Stanton. It looks like he's already gotten a couple of nice hits today. So we'll see if it works out.
Yeah, first inning he mollywopped Shane Bieber tonight, so that was fun to see for everybody but me. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you mostly. It's not fun when we agree. I think this one's much more of a 55-45 or a 60-40 kind of deal. I prefer your side slightly. I think Drew Rasmussen has the ability here, similar to what Free could do for Griffin in the other trade. I think Rasmussen could pretty easily make this a trade where in a month or so I look back and say, wow, Mark, great move.
Yeah.
I would take your side 70-30 even. Because Giancarlo Stanton gets hurt sometimes. It's not always. He's one of the best examples of, are you injury prone or are you just someone who's gotten hurt a lot, kind of flukishly. But
Well, yeah, Drew Rasmussen, I think his like 95th percentile outcome, like if he continues to play well, he could be like a top 20, top 15 pitcher. I actually do think that. So I think there's absolutely an avenue where Mark completely destroys me in this trade. I do
But I
like
think
Drew
there's also
Rasmussen a
top
lot.
5% outcome though. I mean, because we've seen it where Giancarlo Stanton hits 45 dongs,
Yeah,
hits 290, and wins an MVP like he did with the Marlins a couple years ago. So I
that's
guess
what I'm
it's more
hoping
than a
for.
couple at this point, but it's possible.
Yep.
We'll see with it. Lane Thomas is not a nothing either, especially like I was just saying earlier with a Brian Anderson in a 5 outfield league. Lane Thomas was on waivers for a little bit here. I was eyeing him. Great pickup to get him, and great job moving him to get an upgrade when you want the power you want. But I think Lane Thomas is useful, so it's not nothing there either.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah, he's been playing really well. Cool. Well, I think we should get into the third trade, which is still significant, but a little bit smaller, all things considered. Nick, it was actually between you and Mark Missigman. Nick got Ahmed Rosario, and Missigman got Trace Thompson. I do want to just call out, I think since then, Trace Thompson has been dropped. So
Yeah, I
anyone
don't know what he's
listening,
doing dropping him.
if you want Trace Thompson, I think he's on the wires. But there have been a lot of pickups and drops from Michigan. That is something I've noticed.
Yeah, he's making a lot of moves.
Yeah.
And he wanted power, which brought that move to happen. He had a glut of infielders. He felt ideally I would have liked to have moved, just because obviously we're no longer in negotiations. I was trying to make this a deal where I moved one of my outfielders to acquire Bobby Witt when he was trying to move an infielder. Bobby Witt is still someone who's not willing to move, to my knowledge at least. He brought up being kind of disinterested in Ahmed Rosario, who is off to a little bit of a slower start. Very little power. He's slugging like sub 300, but he was good last year. He's not going to probably ever have an OPS over 850, but he's been in the low 700s, which is very passable for a guy with some speed. Most days he's still playing for Cleveland. He's still hitting in the top half of their lineup. He's hitting second most days. So unless he really falls apart and the red hot Miles Straw takes a spot at the top of the lineup again, which I hope does not happen, but Miles Straw has been great so far. That is probably the main risk. So I feel like just Ahmed Rosario is not going to be a reason I'm able to win if I'm able to win, or finish in the money if I finish in the money. But I do think he's probably the more bankable buy low type of thing. It feels like a big sell high, buy low. Again, though, with the Dodgers, like I know he cut Trace Thompson too, so I don't even know what he's doing with that.
Yeah.
Trace Thompson's not playing every day yet, but between Jason Hayward, Trace Thompson, James Outman, who was subject to one of our other conversations on trades, there are some good outfielders in LA. It will probably take an injury, I guess, to one of them for them all to play every single day, although James Outman's been doing it mostly of late. So we'll see what happens there. I don't know. I feel like, I like the trades. I made it, but
Well, one player is currently on a roster and one is not. So I think by default, you may have won that trade, Nick.
who wins the trade if Ahmed Rosario hits 205 with no power all year, and then he cuts Trace Thompson and he just is also bad? Probably him though, right? Like if they're both bad and then I roster the shitty guy all year.
It was all just a ruse. He just wanted
to nuke my counting stats, nuke my OPS. Yeah,
absolutely.
It might work out that way. It has for the first couple of days.
So,
but I still believe Ahmed Rosario will be useful. I think he's a great second base shortstop flex.
I do too.
Very useful player. Yep. And I think Trace Thompson will be too. No one's picked him up yet, but someone probably should.
There are a couple of good players on the waiver, in my opinion. So I do expect someone to pick them up.
We were talking, there's still, even with the guy I picked up earlier this week, there's a lot of prospects out there too, you guys. There are still plenty of prospects who I wish to hell that Frelick would come up. I wish to hell that all of my guys would come up, just so I could make another prospect to add. There's some good prospects out there.
Yeah, just anyone with that green flag, guys, you can put them in that special slot.
Green means go.
Yep. So there are a few people without all of their minor eligible spots filled. So go ahead and pick up those guys. But on to the next. We do have a new segment today called Would You Rather. I prepared a few different resumes similar to the blind resume game that we've played in the past. I'm sure Nick will be much better.
But now I get to look goofy.
So I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm going to list off 3 different resumes, and I'm just going to ask you straight up which one you prefer. This part of the game is going to be pretty silly because the resumes are pretty damn similar. So feel free to ask different questions.
Should I try to guess who they are in my decision, or should I just definitely take the person I prefer?
So that's the thing. Feel free to go ahead and guess each one, but go ahead and just also pick like which one is the best resume. And
gotcha.
I do want to just give an overarching hint. There's not like a huge trick here. Like there is one guy who, in my opinion, is way better than the rest, but they're all roughly the same age. They're all 28 or younger. Pardon. So I'll just get into it. I'm only going to give a few different stats here, but player 1 has 3 home runs, 6 ribbies, and an average of 286. And this is all as of the 9th.
Okay.
So year to
so
date.
Before days started today.
That's right. And I'll give you an age on each one. He's
Okay,
24 years old.
gotcha.
Uh, Player number 2, he has 2 home runs, 5 RBI, and he's batting .313, and he is 26 years old. And player number 3, he has hit 3 home runs, 11 RBIs, and he is batting .357, and he is 28 years old.
Ooh,
So I think there is an obvious answer, but just, which resume do you prefer of the 3? Do you have a second favorite?
I think I definitely want to go 3, 1, 2.
Okay, perfect. Yep. And I will go
Who did
ahead
I
and
take?
so I'll go ahead and read off the 3 players in no particular order, and let's see if you can guess which one is 3 and
Ooh,
which one is 2.
okay. I'll rank the players now too.
So
See if it lines up with my 3, 1, 2.
so each of these players is one of the 3, and I'm
Okay.
reading it in a random order. Alec Boehm, Will Smith, and Garrett Mitchell.
Garrett Mitchell's 3, I think, right?
Garrett Mitchell is player number 1.
Oh, okay. Is Bohm 2?
Boehm is player number 2. So Will
Okay.
Smith was your favorite, who is player number 3. Will Smith is, the best of the 3. He's off to an amazing start. I
Yeah.
just thought it was a fun one because they're all in slightly different parts of their career, and I think they're all just interesting young guys. Will Smith is not a prospect. Will Smith is a stud.
But
But
he was
I
a former
did,
top prospect. I'm glad I
yeah,
picked him. That's who I
yeah,
would probably take first.
yeah, and I think everyone would pick him first. But
This feels like a Garrett Mitchell game there because Garrett Mitchell has been really. Garrett Mitchell came up with a speed background and he's got 3 home runs already playing most
yep,
days for the Brewers. When they call up Sal Frelick, they're going to have Frelick, Weimer, and a Mitchell patrolling that outfield. That Yelich just DH. I love that. They're going to have a really
yeah.
good outfield.
I did mean this to be a little bit of a pro Garrett Mitchell question. Like, this is not a negative on any of the 3 players. I like Alec Boehm a lot as well.
Alec
Um,
Boehm doubled his home runs and RBIs today. Good job there, Roman.
oh Jesus. Okay,
Or he didn't
yeah.
double his home runs. He added a home run and 6 RBIs though. Just since you've done this morning, so good
Wow.
job, Alec Boehm. He's mad that I didn't pick him.
Yeah. Okay. I have not seen that. So, point being, all 3 guys are future top dogs, but
They're all
thought that
guys
could
I
be a
wish I owned. I own none of them.
fun little segment. Now, I do have 2 other quick questions, a little bit different in style. The next one is not a who would you rather. Um, the next one is a question of which players have multiple home runs and multiple stolen bases. We actually talked about this a little bit a few episodes
Okay.
ago, but
Yeah.
I thought it would be fun. We're not going to do one at a time, just speed round. There are a total of 13 players right now who have multiple home runs and multiple stolen bases. Really big overarching hint. For the most part, there are a few exceptions here. They're all studs. They're all stars, top dogs. So I just thought it would be fun, Nick, if we did a quick little speed round and you just went through and tried to name a few, and see how many you could name. There are
Let me see how
13
many I can get through.
currently. Yeah.
All right. So Ronald Acuna is 1. Cedric Mullins is 1.
Yep.
Ryan Reynolds is 1.
Yep.
And now it gets harder.
Basically, anyone you can think of who was drafted pretty high for speed. It's good. Good guess.
Is Bo Bichette 1?
He actually is not.
Oof. Okay. Strike 1 is let's see, who did I draft high for speed? Julio Rodriguez, is he 1?
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, great. What about is Matt Chapman 1? I
He
didn't
is
draft him
not.
high for speed. Ah, damn
He
it.
is not. I'll give you a couple of hints. So there's one player on the Arizona Diamondbacks. There are 2 players on the New York Yankees.
Okay. Aaron
There
Judge is
is,
1.
yes, he is.
And Gleyber Torres is 1. Ooh, I should have gotten
Yep.
him because he's probably the number one worth talking about as far as going up in my values.
Yep. Glaby Baby is 1. So Arizona Diamondbacks, there is one on the Houston Astros, another one on the Baltimore Orioles.
On the Astros, it's probably Tucker, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
On the Orioles, Mateo.
Yep,
On the Diamondbacks, I'm torn. Is it Josh Rojas or is it Corbin Carroll? I'm gonna say I think it's Corbin Carroll.
that's correct.
Okay.
And then
Josh
there's
Rojas has been red hot too.
one on the Tampa Bay Rays and one on the Marlins.
Give me Fat Randy.
No.
No, damn.
Who's the other stud? Who's the
Is it
top
Wander?
dog? Oh yeah, it is. He's breaking out. And then
Dom French McWander Franco. Nice job, Dom. And then
I
you
think
said someone on the who?
Marlins.
On the Marlins. Is it Jazz?
Yep.
Nice. Love
And
Jazz.
then you have gotten every single one who I thought was a reasonable, like obvious
Someone we
guess.
could have seen this coming.
There are only 2 names now who are still remaining on this elite list, and they are not of the like. These are clob dogs at best. They're probably less than that, but you never know. Do you want me
Is
to
one
go
of
ahead
them
and
Yohan Moncada?
no, but great guess. Do you want me to go ahead and say who they are? Or one or two more hints?
Give me one of them, and I'll take one more guess. I want to take 10 seconds to think.
So I'll read off one of them.
Yeah.
One of them is
Brendan Donovan.
Nope.
Okay. Manny Margot is one?
Yeah, Manny Margot is
Damn.
one.
That's a great one.
Manny Margot is currently unowned. And the other is on the Houston Astros, and he's currently leading off.
Leading off at the Houston Astros. Is it Jeremy Pena?
Chas McCormick.
Oh, damn it.
And
okay, there's no way anyone would know this, dude. This was one of my blind resumes for you last week. We didn't get to it with Roman because he already had some good. He already had good stats.
So I really don't know much about Chas McCormick. So I was shocked to see that
he's fancy Miles Straw.
He's also currently unowned. So those are the only 2 kind of odd man out there. Thought that was a fun one.
That was a fun one. Damn.
Do you want to move on to the next segment, or do you want to do one more of these little games, Nick?
Let's do another game, dude. Yeah, I have notes right here that before we move on, dude.
Yeah.
Going into just, I think the first 5 days of baseball before me, you, and Roman talked last week, McCormick already had 3 steals. He was already leading off in 3 or 4 games. And he was already with an OPS over 1,000. So I should have gotten that one. I didn't. And Margot, though, Margot should be owned. Margot is good. I owned Margot for some of last year. I like Margot a lot.
I've owned Margot a lot for just like little lulls, and I don't know. Like I think he's a very usable player.
For sure. Former top prospect. It's been a while, but he used to be a top prospect.
To be honest, I think McCormick should be owned to some extent too. Like you don't
frankly,
have to,
as long as he leads off, I agree.
Yeah, you don't have to own him every single day. You can kind of just pick him up, drop him as needed.
You don't have to keep him for the next 5 years. Just own him for a month.
Yeah. So anyway, those are 2 interesting guys, but the rest of the list, I thought were all kind of like top names this year. And one of the reasons why I wanted to play this game is this year, with all the changes to the rules, the larger bases, the pitch clock, all of the changes, I wasn't really sure what to expect. Now we're so early in, so this is a little bit of a red herring or whatever. But I kind of expected to see some unusual names in this list, and you could argue, Wander Franco, like he's emerging.
Mateo might qualify as that.
Yeah, Mateo, but many argued that guys with lesser speed were going to emerge as real stolen base threats, and for the most part, all of these guys are pretty fast. I mean, Aaron Judge, like he is actually kind of fast, but like that's
he's a guy who's stolen bases before. Though. I'm with you.
Yeah. So anyway, just thought that could be a fun one. I think the story so far, stolen bases are obviously up overall, but the top providers are still the absolute like speed demons. So just worth calling out. Yeah. Any other thoughts before we move on to the next game, Nick?
No. Hey, I like that. That was a good exercise. Okay. I'm embarrassed I couldn't get more of those. I'll redeem myself. Let's go.
I think you're going to hit it here. So we actually went through something really similar pre-show, but I already wrote this down, so I'm just going to go for it. And I'm sure you're going to get a few right off the bat. But talking StatCast, talking exit velocity, pre-show we were talking a little bit about max exit velocity. Do you know who the current top 5 average exit velocity hitters are in baseball?
Is Judge one of them?
Yep. Judge is number 5.
Oh, geez. Okay.
But I mean, there is actually a gap from 6 to 5. It's like more than, I think, 2 miles per hour average. which if you look at it, that's actually kind of
That is
significant.
significant.
Yeah. And they've all been playing a good amount. Like there's none that are just kind of like an oddball Bren Club. Although
is
they
Matt
might be
Chapman
right.
one of them? Matt Chapman's gonna be one of them, I bet. I think he was leading it
Matt
as of a
Chapman
couple days ago.
is number one. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, good job. So
Is
only
Stanton on there?
3 more. Stanton is not. Stanton is a little
Strike
bit
one.
lower, but I mean he's around number 10, so it's still a great guess.
Yeah. I know because I know Vlad's not on there. Is O'Neal Cruz on there?
He is not.
That makes sense, actually. He has some weak contact, too. Okay, strike two. Oh, you know what? I know one who's on there. It's probably or one who hopefully is close to the top if he's not on top 5. Is Joey Gallo on there?
Number 2. Good job.
He's number 2. Wow.
Yep.
So I've gotten Judge, Gallo, and Chapman in there. What did you say? 1, 2, and 5?
Yep, exactly. There are 2 more. One of them is actually, I'd say, the hardest to guess, and the other plays for the Dodgers.
Oh, Corey Seager's probably on this.
No.
Damn.
He might be high up. I should
Okay.
say.
That's fine. Let me see. I'll take one more guess, even though that was 3 strikes. On the Dodgers, is it JD Martinez?
Yes, he's number 3.
Okay.
And then number 4, in my opinion, the hardest to guess here is MJ Melendez.
Damn. Okay, I was not going to get MJ. Wow.
Yep.
Interesting.
And also, just calling out, it's not really that close. Like, those are the top 5 right now. So early in the season, so things will shift, things will change.
That is awesome.
But,
wow.
Just a fun one.
That other one was a Garrett Mitchell game. This is an MJ Melendez game.
Yep.
Also a JD Martinez game. Good job. And a Matt Chapman game, by the way. The fact that he's leading it. I knew he was doing really well. I watched a lot of Blue Jays with Vlad. Matt Chapman's hitting like 500 so far.
And I think before the game started today, he was leading baseball in RBIs, which I guess coincides with this StatCast.
That dude's awesome so far, yeah.
So, yeah. I forget who picked him up.
Matt Chapman. I think he's on Team Missigman.
All right. Shout out, Mark.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So that's all I have for the games today.
Nice, dude.
One other, thank you for playing, Nick. Thanks for being a good sport. I think it was fun because there are a couple of just bizarre call outs, Chas McCormick.
I'm not getting Melendez, yeah.
Manny Margot and Melendez. But and the Garrett Mitchell show, shout out to Sparky. That's a good buy. I think he was maybe $4. So
yeah,
great young player.
Yeah, man. I was really hoping with Joey Weimer and Frelick both, they'd be up here instead of Garrett Mitchell. But Garrett Mitchell's here to stay, man. He's good.
I think they're all going to be good.
They will. I think they'll all be good too. I'm just saying. I was hoping ideally he wouldn't even start out in the big leagues.
Yeah, I didn't know what to think either. I kind of had them all in the same category. I didn't really. It's hard when you have those prospects to differentiate between them necessarily in terms of like who has the high end. I'm not quite there in terms of my knowledge, but always fun to watch, especially when they come out. But cool. So the next item on the list, the next segment that we had planned is Nick's idea, which was just to review some hot and cold players, some guys who are off to good starts, some guys who are not. What to make of it? Are these starts that we should actually be concerned about? Or
who's changed your view?
Do we look the other way? Yeah. I think we do have about 5 minutes left on this call, but we may just go through a few and then we'll jump to a sponsor and flip back to the second half of the segment. But Nick, anyone on your list who you want to call out? I do have a few, so feel free to jump back. Yep.
I think my top one, as far as like, I don't do rankings. We're not real fantasy analysts. If I did rankings, I think my biggest riser, who I think it's kind of legit for so far this year, I know he's hurt, his wrist is broken, but it's Adam Duvall, man. Like going into the draft, I didn't draft Duvall. He was not really on my board. I thought he'd probably hit like 7th or 8th and not play every day. I thought he might just be in a platoon. But again, I know just in the last couple hours, we've heard he broke his wrist. But even when he comes back, I think he's going to continue to hit like 4th or 5th in that lineup, play most days in center field. And his swing, I mean, it really is just kind of built for left field and Fenway. Like, I feel like Adam Duvall is someone who was a blind spot for me. And the lesson there is definitely moving forward, I'm going to be more open to the idea that a guy, and Brian Anderson to a lesser degree too, who's done it before, just maybe not in the last year, but going to a great situation could be better. And Adam Duvall is a great example of it.
Duvall's off to a great start. He's $5 from Zach. We were talking about Zach at the beginning of the pod. He's made some great moves. Zach is, or pardon me, Adam Duvall was a total blind spot for me too. He's someone I did not take seriously as in, someone that I would be considering drafting or even rostering this year, to be honest. Looking back at some of his stats historically, in 2021, it looks like he had 38 home runs.
Yeah, that's
Um,
on exactly.
and, then back in 2017, he had 31. In 2016, he had 33. So this is a guy who clearly, I mean, his average is not great, but that's the case for a lot of power hitters. And I guess I don't know why I was so off of him. Clearly Zach was right in picking up for $5, but
I was slow to
um,
react to the fact that he's taken a weird path in his career defensively because he used to be a corner outfielder slash DH, and he's athletic though. He plays a very passable center field, which in hindsight is something the Red Sox definitely needed with them keeping Kike in the infield. So in hindsight, it was kind of clear in a way it probably should have been to me before the season that he would play more than just some days in a platoon role. And again, I mean, Fenway Park for a guy like when JD Martinez was there too, it's just a great spot for a guy, a righty who hits a lot of pull side fly balls. And Duvall is Mr.
yep,
Pull side fly balls. It's just a really good match there.
yep, absolutely. That's a great one. I think just to recap, we both think now Duvall is for real. So, you
He'd be
said it
my
was.
top 35 or 40 outfielders we drafted today, and he was healthy. He's not healthy. There's no redraft today, but I would be taking him in the top like 150.
Yeah. So it is tough because I know that the wrist can impact power significantly. So hopefully he recovers well. Um, but yeah, I do agree with you. So obviously a hold for Zach, and regardless of what happens next, Zach was definitely right to look out for him on draft day.
For sure.
So moving forward, I think another fun power guy who was off to a good start, also banged up a little bit right now, is Joey Gallo.
Mm.
What say you, Nick?
I think Joey Gallo is a great example of another guy who I don't think his situation is quite as beautiful, but I think he's in a much better spot than he's been in the last year and a half since he was traded to the Yankees. And besides playing in New York, he's been pretty good his entire career.
Yep.
And we've talked in previous pods about the benefits of the harder to do a full shift on someone. Joey Gallo benefits a lot from the fact there's no full shift. They're sort of shifting, I understand, but look, if that just takes him from being a 205 average guy to a 225 average guy, that
Big
makes
difference.
him significantly more useful in our league. And I think he's not necessarily going to stay as a top 25 or 30 player, which I think he's been so far, but I do think he hits the ball hard. He always has. Got a good batter's eye. He strikes out a lot, but he hits the ball hard when he hits it. I would be shocked if he's not useful all year too.
I think that's a good call. Yeah, I don't know how to say this. So I think Gallo is obviously worth rostering. To be completely honest, I felt similar to him. Like Duvall and Gallo were very similar. I was even lower on Gallo. I think I will say even right now, like if how much I believe Duvall, if that's like an 8 out of 10, I think Gallo might be like a 6 out of 10. That doesn't mean I
Feels
don't
pretty
believe
similar to me.
him,
Yeah,
but it's just maybe a little different in the magnitude. But yeah, that's really all I have to say there. I think you have a good take. Anyone else on your side on the hot list?
7 p.m. to 7 a.m., we're paying for bandwidth that we are not using.
Why?
Why?
We're paying for something we're not using?
Why do we accept things the way they are? If we have a problem, other people do too. There's our market.
Why can't we sell the bandwidth to other companies?
Make it a commodity, like a pork belly.
yep. All right. As I was saying before our ad sponsors took over. So I think two guys that have changed a lot, in my opinion, just from the last 2.5 weeks. Not either one that I own. I mentioned him briefly for a second. Matt Chapman, probably in a positive way, is the most significant upturn. Just that Matt Chapman was hitting 7th or 8th on opening day. Played last year, fine, but not special for the Blue Jays. And we mentioned we're talking about like different covering the rosters, power guys. Who's always going to hit for a lot of power in Toronto. He always has most of his career hit for a lot of power, but he just looks different this year. He's hitting the ball consistently at good angles, good exit velocity. We talked about that too already. And I think now he's hitting cleanup. If I knew that opening day for the Blue Jays, they've been very reactive to move him up from I think 7th to 4th opening day to now. I would have definitely been taking him a lot higher than I was when the year started. And in the opposite direction, Brandon Belt was, I think, hitting 5th on the first couple games of the season for Blue Jays. I loved him coming into the year. Loved him leaving San Francisco. He's a guy with great expected stats most years. Just plays in a cavernous ballpark that is San Francisco for lefties. Finally seemed to be healthy. He must just hate Toronto. I don't know what's going on with him because he's struck out like half of his at-bats or more than half of his at-bats, I think, and looked abysmal. So he's barely playing. When he does play, he's hitting like in the bottom third of that lineup now. I'm pretty much out on him. I'm worried he won't play very often, if at all, because they can start playing Danny Jansen, who is good at catcher, and letting Alejandro Kirk DH instead of him. And then if they do that, which they've done a couple times in the last week now, there's nowhere for him to play because he's not going to take first base from Vlad. So I just don't know if he's going to play that much anymore. He's somebody I loved coming in. I'm ready to cut bait there, basically. Matt Chapman, though, the other way, again, if we were drafting right now, he'd be in my top, like, 12 or so third baseman probably, in a way that, like, he was not bad for me when the year started.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I don't blame you, Belt. I mean, I wouldn't want to live up there. I mean, it's just Canada sucks. But anyway.
Is that Joey Votto?
Yeah, good for Matt Chapman.
Imagine being a Canadian first baseman who hits left-handed. It isn't Joey Votto. The pressure would get to me too. I get it, Brandon Belt.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. But no, good for Matt Chapman. I think he is solidifying himself as a real top dog this year. So it is good to see someone like that just take the next step. So Nick, we did have a couple of others on the list. I wrote down all of the Rays pitchers as hot starts. Kodai Senga and Pablo Lopez. Any of those stick out to you?
Yeah, I think Pablo Lopez. See, it's tough with the Rays pitchers because I think specifically Rasmussen and Springs, we've talked about before on these pods. By the end of draft season, the only reason I'm not picking one of them is they were like 150s to 180s ADP guys. But then by like the main event in the final couple weekends, they were like pushing top 100. So people were kind of hip to them in a way that I feel like you and I always liked them a lot. You owned Rasmussen starting the year. I have made it no secret. I love Springs. So we're on the same page there. They've been incredible. They're going to continue to be pretty good. But Pablo Lopez is somebody who I think probably was not even a guaranteed SP2 in my mind when the year started. He was probably like around SP25. But just the difference in his expected stats and the numbers he's put up pitching his first few starts here looks sustainable in a way that I think now probably Pablo Lopez is somebody we're drafting from start to scratch here. I would probably take Pablo Lopez definitely within top 20, like pushing top 15. He has been really good. And he's been really good in a scenario right here where south of like Garrett Cole and Brandon Woodruff and Shane McClanahan, like there haven't been very many of the aces who have actually looked acey even. So like, not that I'm definitely taking him over. I'm not taking him over Corbin Burns. I'm not taking him over the top aces. I'm just saying a scenario right now, because I think the ball is more juiced than we expected coming into the year. The bases are bigger. The shifts are banned in a way they weren't before. He looks good in ways that I think will stick. And the Twins are generally sharper than I don't think they're like the Dodgers necessarily, but they are a sharper than average front office. So I think he's probably for real. I think he's going to continue to be a really good starting pitcher.
Pablo Lopez or Clayton Kershaw?
It's a good one. I think I'd take Pablo Lopez.
Yeah, so I think that's why it's such a big step. I think I might agree. And
I think Kershaw might be better on an inning basis, but I think I have way more confidence Pablo Lopez won't get hurt. And I'm not even sure for sure that Kershaw will be better on an inning per inning basis.
Yeah, so goodbye, Eric, on Pablo Lopez. Pablo Lopez, I believe, is up about 2 ticks across the board.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he is
sustainable.
He's just looking great. I think he's a little bit of just kind of a new guy this year. So
different dude.
Excited to see what he does for the rest of the year. Okay. Anything else on your end, Nick, in terms of hot starts? I do have a list of the cold cuts as well.
I just have one that I want to call out that I think is interesting because it's exactly what I would have guessed. Staying with the Twins, you played a game with me a little bit ago where multiple home runs, multiple steals. Who do you think right now in baseball is second in hits, but has no home runs and no steals?
Is it Luis Arias?
It is indeed.
Okay.
My dude is hitting 500 as of now, and like, I am not shocked whatsoever. Like but it's so interesting because he has 4 runs and 3 RBIs. He is like become a caricature of what I would have drafted him for. You draft him for good batting average, decent OPS, and then okay counting stats. He's given you not really any counting stats, no power and no speed, but he's hitting 500. So like you can't not play him.
You mean a caricature of a beautiful man? He's stunning.
Oh, dude.
And his body, but no, it's funny because
he's like Baby Rowdy.
Baby Rowdy.
Baby Alejandro Kirk.
In real life, I remember when that trade happened in the offseason and we were talking and I'm like, is there something that I know or that they know that I don't know?
There's
Like,
something the Twins don't know about Kyle.
um,
I'm not telling them.
I mean, they are listeners of the pod. But yeah, like even then, that was before Pablo's breakout that we are seeing already. And to me, like Luis Arias is very serviceable. Like I think he can be underrated sometimes, but Pablo Lopez is just a better player overall. I did not understand that trade.
Yeah.
But anyway,
The last one I want to call out
question.
too,
Yeah.
who I do think has changed my opinion in a positive way, is when the year started, I thought he was probably a top 5 catcher, but Adley is legitimate. And we're both Orioles fans, so we're not doing Orioles homer stuff here. Just when a former top prospect, though, who has never been bad and only been up for a year, suddenly starts playing at a high level the way he has so far, looks as good as he's looked from both the right and left side. The lineup looks better than I thought it would look for the first couple weeks of the Orioles, and also just hitting for power. Adley's probably going to give you more power than I thought, and also hit for a ridiculous average, a lot of walks, good counting sensitive average ones. If we were rejecting today, Adley would go from someone I would have taken like probably after the top. Like I would have taken Real Muto, would have taken Sal Perez, would have taken Will Smith. There were a handful of catchers I thought were better. I think right now Adley's probably like 2, maybe 3.
Like
he could be number 1 too. Also, like I think it's very much in the realm of possibilities.
I mean, with Will Smith's start, I think there's an argument for Smith above Adley, maybe.
I also think I'd take Real Muto and Smith over him.
I don't know if I would take Salvi over.
I don't think Adley. I would. That's what I'm saying. I think he would jump Salvi for me.
I agree. Yeah, no, it's exciting. It's exciting. We'll jump off of Adley.
It looks sustainable.
He's no cloud dog. Like it's really good to see. Yeah,
for sure.
He's gonna eat. Okay, awesome. So as far as the hot starts go, a lot of them we believe in. It sounds like overall, a lot of them were kind of maybe.
These are guys we'd buy high. We would buy high on these Rays pitchers. We would buy high on Adley. We'd buy high on Matt Chapman.
Luis Robert. That's another one. He has 4 home runs already. His career best is 13. Obviously, across the other categories, he's doing pretty well too. So that's another exciting start.
Lou Bob is a clear listener of this pod too, because Lou Bob is probably pissed that we said Gleyber Torres and Teoscar would have better home runs plus steals than him. He heard that about a month ago and got very angry about it, and now he's just raking.
I think they all heard it except for Teoscar, and maybe
Teoscar heard it that one day with the 2 home runs, and that was the only day he listened.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Gleyber's also been incredible. He's another guy when we're talking about guys I believe in more now. I liked him fine, but because I think I think you picked him and I picked Teoscar, although we both agreed it was between them basically, which is hilarious.
Yep. Yeah. So
Gleyber's good.
Agreed. So let's hop over into the cold cuts here. The losers of the season so far.
Good, because I'm starving.
Ooh, yum.
Can't wait to eat. Do you have any berries?
We'll start off with a guy who loves berries. He eats them by the bunches. His name
berries.
His name is Rowdy Tellez. He's a big man. He is off. He's off to a terrible start.
Blind spot.
Yeah,
in real time, that's a blind spot for me. I thought he was off to a good start.
Oh no. In fact.
Oh no, is right then. Okay.
On my sheet, he actually wasn't even showing up here for a second. Rowdy Tellez here. He is off to a bad start. He is batting 154. He has 1 home run, 26 at bats. So like he's playing.
He's playing every day, basically. Yeah.
OPS.
Okay, gross.
566. He has 4 hits total.
Oh, Rowdy.
So I'll start off. Rowdy is actually someone I still believe in. This is a problem. Like it's something that definitely needs to be considered. I don't look the other way. So on my fear-o-meter, 10 being like, holy shit, like he is eating too many berries. He's like popping at the seams.
He's got to chill on the berries.
We are Willy Wonka, and he is like Veruca Salt or whatever her name is. She's just floating up to
the blueberry
top.
chick. Yeah.
So that's 10. 1 is MVP Rowdy. I'm probably at like, I don't know, a 5 or 6. It's like somewhere in between.
Yeah, I feel like this is a blind spot. I didn't even know that. I thought he was doing better than he was.
Okay.
But I just worry because before last year, Rowdy was not a guy who played every day. So while I think Rowdy is a 35 to 40 home run guy, and this is just a cold streak, he's in real life, he's not a good defender. He's not young. And if you're the Brewers, you're not tied to him long term. So there's no shock to me if the Brewers see him have a bad April overall if he doesn't fix it soon. And suddenly he stops playing every day. Like I could see that happening in real life because he doesn't add anything when he's not hitting. And even though I want to stress, without looking at Statcast, I don't think anything probably has fundamentally changed with Rowdy in a way that would make me worry too much, other than just that he's not Paul Goldschmidt, he's not Matt Olson, he's not Vlad Jr., he's not Pete Alonso, where if he has a bad month, he'll still hit fourth every day for his team. Like I could see a guy who's previously only been a guy in a platoon and is not young or a prospect. But I could see him losing some of his at bats and not getting a chance to fix this if he doesn't fix it soon.
I agree.
I'm probably with you. I would probably say a 5 or a 6, which is higher than I would say for most guys.
Yeah. So we'll have to see. And you brought up a really good point. That's a roster that has a lot of depth, a lot of young talent, eager to bring those guys up, and they can move things around. There's a lot of dynamic talent on that team, and they're playing well. I think the Brewers, I just looked at a power ranking, and they were, I think, maybe third or fourth overall. Just random analysts throwing their stuff out here, but
they're in my
we'll
lock
see.
in right now. End of the year Cy Youngs: Jeffrey Springs, AL; Brandon Woodruff, NL.
I like it.
I don't know neither one, but it would make me a lot of money. So let's make it happen.
There we go. Well, good to spread out your bets a little bit. Maybe it's good if you don't own them, right? It's a win-win.
It's almost better. Yeah, it's almost better. It's like a hedge.
Exactly. So I do have a few more that I could list off. Do you want me to just read through and maybe you pick who you want to talk about, or do you have anyone special you want to bring up?
I've got one, but let's see if you say him. Go ahead and give me your list, and I'll pick one or two. We'll talk about, and then if he's not on it, I'll tell you mine after that.
All right. Javi Baez, Jose Barrios, Anthony Volpe. We already talked Rowdy Tellez, Alex Bregman, Lucas Giolito, Teoscar Hernandez, and Marcus Semien.
Okay. So I think Volpe and Barrios are the two, and Volpe was the one I was going to bring up. But Barrios and Volpe probably don't want to talk about, because similar to Rowdy, who we just talked about, every other one you name there is either a guy who's clearly a pillar right now of their franchise, or proven it enough financially locked in where I don't see a bad month changing their status the same way. Like I mentioned earlier, Brandon Belt has dropped from 5th to barely playing in the Blue Jays lineup and doesn't have a chance to fix his bad start. Oswaldo Cabrera, whatever his name is, the other Yankee shortstop prospect. For first start with Volpe here. Volpe's not been bad. I've watched a decent amount of Volpe actually because of just the fact that the Orioles were just playing the Yankees, and he looks fine. But he's sitting 9th. He's not had a good start outcomes wise. And in AAA, the other shortstop prospect they have, Cabrera, has been really good. And he was better last year when he was up, before Volpe was ever given the chance. So while I don't think Volpe's someone I'm panicking on, I know you own Volpe. This is not like a panic Kyle Volpe thing. This is just that the Yankees have aspirations of winning 100 games and going to the World Series. So if Volpe is hitting 200 and is still only 20, 21 years old at the end of this month, I could definitely see them, for the service time reasons too, saying, hey, let's go let him get some more seasoning. We'll bring up the other guy who we think could be just as good anyway, and he won't get a chance to fix bad starts there. Similarly, again, you said Bregman, Semien have had bad starts. They have, but they're in big contracts. They're guys who've done it before, MVP candidates at different points in their careers. I'm not worried about them. Who else did you mention? Besides Barrios? Just to make sure I don't miss anybody.
Lucas Giolito, Teoscar
Giolito,
Hernandez.
I am concerned about, because Giolito, I think, is a little bit of a head case. I think if he gets it, he'll get it. But Giolito probably falls in the Barrios category for me, in the Volpe category. Just I was less in anyway. I did believe him, and it's a little bit counter to what I was just saying too, because Barrios has a fat contract from the Blue Jays. They'll keep trotting him out there. But Barrios is somebody before the year started who I thought was, hey, he had a bad year last year, new environment, he'll figure it out. But he just hasn't looked good these first couple starts. He didn't look good really at any point last year. And he's always been, because he was a top prospect, I think, like his mid to high 3s ERAs and decent whip with decent strikeouts was always, I think, looked at more fondly than it actually was. I feel like Barrios is probably more of a streamer than anything now, in a way that when the year started, I probably would have taken him as a top 60, top 50 starting pitcher. So I don't think I'm dropping him a ton.
That's a good take.
But I probably wouldn't want to own him. If I saw he was going up against the Dodgers and the Braves this week, I'd probably just cut him. If I saw he was going up against the A's and the Nationals, he's probably my lineup.
Yeah.
Similar with Giolito.
Yeah. I was just looking up some historical stats. I think everything you said about Volpe is absolutely accurate. I do own Volpe, so a concern of mine is that they would send him back down.
I only panic if it's a guy where the team could panic, like with Belt or like with Rowdy potentially, who they're not tied to beyond this year, or Volpe, where they might not want to make his confidence get hurt.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I heard this argument. It's not mine. I heard it from some other podcast, but like Volpe is not on Julio Rodriguez's level is as a prospect. Now the team is exciting, but Julio started pretty poorly last year.
Yeah,
If you
that's
look at
true.
April, really
Very true.
these are the only things keeping me excited. But no, I think you brought up a great point with all of
No,
these
Volpe's
guys.
walking some. I'm not panicking on Volpe.
Yeah.
Like long term at all. Like
Yeah.
as you in this league where you can keep him for years after this, I wouldn't be panicking remotely. My long term thesis hasn't changed on Volpe. It's purely just that like it might take longer to get there if he doesn't figure it out in the next week or two. Just because we talked about earlier, Joey Gallo got like destroyed by the Bronx. I think we've seen Aaron Hicks be destroyed by the Bronx. I think if he's not getting good batted ball outcomes in a way that really isn't in his control necessarily in the next 2 or 3 weeks, those rabid fans will not be cheering for him anymore every day. And the fan base will push the front office in a way that is not the case with most teams to just put him back in the minors. And I fear that, but I also want to be on the record as saying, I think it's more likely Volpe hits 2 home runs this week or just has like an 8 for 15 next 15 at bats because he's hitting the ball fine. His batter's eye doesn't look terrible. He's striking out a little bit, but he's walking some. He's just a guy is he 20 or 21? He's young as hell and he's in his first couple at bats. It's not shocking at all.
Yep. Agreed. I don't remember if we talked about Javi Baez all that much, but is that one where you're just kind of
He's one where I'm pretty out. I'm pretty out,
Yeah.
but
He
I'm
looks
less
awful
out,
so far.
but I'm less out just because even though he looks awful, he's on a bad team, unlike Volpe. He has a fat contract, unlike Volpe or Belt or Rowdy, and his team doesn't have anybody who's definitely breaking down the doors to take his job. So I think he has the security to, because he was bad last year too. But if he sucks all of April and part of May, I think he'll still probably hit somewhere in the top 6 of that lineup and get a chance to fix it in a way that I worry about these other guys who talked about not getting.
That's a smart thesis to rely on, just evaluating what is the team like, what is the structure, what's the context of these players, like how do they fit in with the roster. And I think that's a really good point.
I think generally I only worry about bad starts if it's on a team where they're not guaranteed to have time to fix it. So, and it would have been my thesis. I traded him to Griffin. He's doing very well. But if Outman had a bad first week or two, especially when you see what Jason Hayward and Trace Thompson are doing also, if one of those 3 stops having good at-bats, there's a good chance that person's just getting buried for the other 2. Like that's probably going to happen to one of those 3. I think Outman's the least likely to have it happen to now for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Like he's been incredible. I thought he'd be good. He's been better than I thought he'd be. It's kind of what you're seeing in St. Louis actually. Like with Dylan Carlson, this time a year ago, Dylan Carlson was off the table from the Cardinals in a trade for Juan Soto. They wouldn't trade Dylan Carlson to get Juan Soto. And right now he's behind the injured Lars Nootbaar. He's behind Jordan Walker. He's behind Tyler O'Neill, who the manager apparently hates. He's behind a Donovan, who I know isn't playing the outfield, but Donovan's taking at bats in the infield that could have gone to someone else. And he's also behind a Alec Burleson, who's hitting second for them all of a sudden. We didn't mention him earlier, but he's available. Someone should probably pick him up. Hitting second for the Cardinals, a really good lineup. It's just interesting to me, mostly, if the guy is in a position where if he doesn't fix his bad start soon, things will change for him in a way that he can't control. That's what I panic about usually. Well
said. Any other big call outs before moving on to current events, Nick?
Yes, let me see. Let me see if there's anybody else negative I'm concerned about. You hit a lot of good ones there.
Yeah. And
I mentioned him already once, so I don't want to like spend too much time on this because it's not.
Yeah.
There's no need to. He's not going to become available. But when the year started, Corbin Burns was my number 1 starting pitcher, and I think he's probably not in my top 2 right now. Don't know if that's the case for you. Don't know if it matters if he is or not. But I do think Corbin Burns is probably more like SP5 than he is SP1 the rest of the way. I think he'll figure it out. He'll be fine. It won't matter in fantasy too much. I just want to make sure I'm on the record of saying that.
Really interesting point. I've heard a couple of people mention that on other podcasts I listen to. It has been a little bit off my radar, admittedly, just because, like you said, he's off the table. So yeah, I have not been digging into that, but he's not off to a great start, obviously. That's interesting. To start the year, he was my number 2, so I have not reevaluated.
And again, I don't want to make it too much out of a mountain on a molehill here, because again, I would still take him as probably the 3rd or the 4th. It's just a case of going into the year. I looked at the last 2 or 3 years, and I had Garrett Cole when the year started, so I was very much like watching Garrett Cole and other guys around Garrett Cole. And Corbin Burns was incredible in the COVID year, which was a short year, and he's been good. He's been the best starting pitcher in fantasy the last 3 years in the aggregate. But when you factor out the fact that 2020 was a really short season, not even really a full third, basically, it was about a third of a year, and then you factor in that he was actually pretty bad for the second half of last year, because this isn't just a bad start. This is, I mean, he was like 4.5 ERA for the second half, I think, the last like 12 or so starts last year. So it feels like about half a season now we've seen consistently he hasn't been great, which again, I can't stress enough. I'm not panicking. And unlike what I was saying a second ago about the hitters, like Corbin Burns is incredible. He's won a Cy Young. He's not changing any like opportunity. He'll figure it out and be fine, I think, more likely than not, 95% more likely than not. But I think when you're in the top like 15 or 20 players in fantasy, even a slight change, in my opinion, is something worth mentioning. And I think that is one I would say.
Yeah, no, great call out. It's something that wasn't really on my radar to this
Basically,
extent,
what I'm saying is Brendan cut him or trade him to me on the cheap.
What do you think, fab wise? Brendan cuts him tomorrow. Do you think we have $1,000 of fab? Do you think he breaks like 130?
This is not an Alfred Morris situation, just to be clear. This is probably somebody I would go like 10
80.
to 15%.
Yeah, agreed.
Maybe 18 if I'm desperate for a pitcher.
There's a lot of value on the waivers. No need to get over dramatic. Like Burns is a talented guy, but let's play conservatively.
Like rest of season, Michael Wacha, who just at 10 Ks, or Corbin Burns.
I mean, if you extrapolate, Wacha might have it.
If you project their stats out based on their first few starts here, Wacha is significantly better. So it's kind of a coin flip.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. Let's move on. Let's move on to current events. I think we have a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. One quick note that we can start off with: there has been some recent news, injuries. So there's been a lot going on in the league. Unfortunately, just the other night, I did see O'Neal Cruz with a pretty terrible injury. I don't know what the catcher was up to. There was some banter back and forth. Do you have any thoughts, Nick?
Yeah, I think it's just a really unfortunate situation. I think the interview afterwards was interesting because there wasn't much remorse, which I don't know if you don't necessarily owe remorse, but I think just in this PC world we live in, once you've had an hour or two to cool off, like if they'd interviewed him in the moment, I'm not shocked if he's like, dude, fuck, he didn't slide like around me. It's his fault a little bit there. I don't even think it's bad if you think that in your head, but I am kind of shocked he didn't sort of say when they told him the guy's hurt for a while, like, oh, dude, I respect him as a ball player, and I'm sorry this happened. This is sad. This is a bummer. So
should have just said that. Yep.
It's just it's a weird stance to take. Bummer about Cruz too, because Cruz was another guy who, like I talked about it with Duvall. He's hurt, but I don't know. I wasn't super in on Cruz in the year start. Not that it matters. I don't own him, so I'm not going to get him in the trades. He's a pretty high end prospect.
Yeah,
but he was looking good.
Yeah. No, he
hopefully
really
he comes
was.
back and is himself. Hopefully he can make it back this year too. I've seen conflicting reports about if it's like a 3 or 4 month thing, if it's thinking he might not make it back at all. Hopefully he's back.
I saw like an 8 to 10 week, which just seems way too ambitious to me.
I've seen really, really ambitious ones. I think it's probably not something where he's back in the first half of the year. And I'm with it though, where hopefully he's back in the final couple months. But I've also seen conservative ones say he probably isn't playing again this year. Or if he does, he'll play at a really shitty like version of himself.
I hope he's back soon, but I agree. Like when I first saw the clip, I assumed he was out for the year. Okay. On to the next injury. We've mentioned Duvall a little bit, the wrist. Any major concerns, Nick, or is it just kind of a wait and see?
Great question, because like I forget the muscle in the wrist. Someone who's watching could probably say it from memory and make me look silly for not remembering the wrist muscle. But like when this happened to Matt Olson back when he was on the A's, it zapped his power for a while. And it has happened to some guys where it zaps power when the wrist gets screwed up. And it's also happened recently where guys will come back and be just fine. Also, Olson's fine now. So I think this is something where with Duvall, because I wasn't in already, I'm a little bit concerned, but I don't want to go back either on what I said, because similar to when a team moves him around, like I'm kind of out on Belt because the team feels like they're more out on Belt now on the Blue Jays. With Duvall, they were hitting him higher than I thought they would. They were playing him every day. I don't think his wrist is going to change the way they view his defensive abilities, which makes him their daily center fielder. So until I saw him play and saw the wrist be an impactful thing, I'd probably still 90% of my confidence feel that way for him. Which means if we were drafting him today, I'd probably take him as like my outfielder 4 or 5.
I think that's fair. Okay. There are a couple of other tough ones. Roman, I am sorry, buddy. Eloy is hurt again. And
he was DHing.
Yeah. And Tim Anderson is also hurt. Tim Anderson is receiving treatment on his knee, and he's currently eligible to return tomorrow. So they haven't put him on the IL yet, but it looks like it might lean that way. So tough news for the White Sox, and tough news, more importantly, for Roman. Any thoughts, Nick?
I think Eloy is so tough, man. Eloy's been so good for the most part in his career when he's played. And like I said with Stanton earlier tonight, Stanton is someone who, like, he got drilled in the face. He's had some freak injuries, some also real injuries, I guess. But Eloy is no longer like a young guy. He's just a little bit below average age guy. And I don't know, like, it feels sad because I hope this isn't one of those things where he just quickly becomes a guy who's too brittle to play a full season at any point. I didn't feel that way coming into the year. I'm not ready to say I feel that way now, but I just worry he becomes like a Byron Buxton kind of guy where kind of without like any real warning, you go from being like, oh, he's just gotten unlucky to like now, I really can't take him in the top like 6 rounds. Hope I'm wrong. But especially when he's DHing and this happens, it just makes me worried.
The concern is there. I agree.
Yeah.
It's tough. I did notice Roman had Eloy added to the trade block, so it did catch my eye. But the injuries are just nonstop with Eloy. I really hope he can turn it around. He's obviously a very talented player. On a more important things, current events wise, Nick, over the weekend we did see a story top of mind. I think it's been covered amongst most baseball podcasts.
Of course.
But yeah, would you like to explain?
Yeah, the Dalai Lama thing.
Sorry.
What is that?
I was just laughing. Sorry.
Oh, no, I heard like some noise. I don't know if you heard the noise. Did you hear that noise?
No, I think it was me laughing. I was trying to
No, I
hold
heard
it in.
like music.
Uh-oh.
Okay, never mind that. I thought we were laughing at the same thing.
No,
I thought the Dalai Lama was cursing us. So the Dalai Lama had a child who, like Santa, was sitting on his lap because of Easter weekend. And the child said that he did not want to mouth kiss Dalai Lama, and Dalai Lama said that he had to mouth kiss him anyway. So they did mouth kiss, and the child sucked at Dalai Lama's tongue, which is directly applicable to baseball because I think about guys who are after slow starts who I still do believe in. And I think about guys like Max Muncy, for example, who I own. Max Muncy's been pretty bad.
So he said, "Suck my tongue." And
Max
you're like,
Muncy has told me daily, because the Dodgers are still hitting him cleanup. He's still had some good seasons in the past. He's saying, while I sit on his lap, suck my tongue.
yeah.
And I say, Max, I'm not sure, just based on the batted ball outcomes you've had so far, that I want to suck your tongue currently. But because he's ultimately sort of like a religious figure in my life, though, because he's on my fantasy baseball team, I have on every single morning still sucked his tongue and put him in my lineup. So like, I think we can all sort of relate to that. And it's interesting when you see it in real time outside of the fantasy baseball universe, the way it can sort of drum up an emotion in you.
It's a good question. I think I'm trying to explore, who are the real Smooch McGees of baseball? Who is kissing under the bleachers? I know one of them is probably my guy, Tyler O'Neill. St. Louis has not been happy with him. There have been some, concerns off the field. Is he kissing under the bleachers?
He stopped putting out for the manager. Whatever his name is.
Yeah. So I think there are a lot of questions. And you mentioned it, Nick, with Muncy, with O'Neill. It is interesting because being a Smooch McGee, being a Kissmeister, it's not necessarily a bad thing. We know on the other side, in the football world, Tom Brady, TB12 himself, was notorious as a kisser, not just kissing Giselle, but his own son. So
a fountain of youth.
Yes. So we could see some really talented guys have big ears if they are just doing a little bit of kissing, like the Dalai Lama, like his greatness. You're right. Yeah.
That's probably what Dalai Lama's thinking too is, hey, I'm getting older. I want to maintain my prime as long as possible. I've seen Tom Brady do it. I don't think it's a TB12. It's not the avocado toast shit. It is, or the avocado ice cream, pardon me. It is sucking the elixir out of a child's mouth makes you young like a child. Yeah. So it's really the most logical way to go about it. It's not great when it's captured in a video because it doesn't look great to fans.
Well, and there are a lot of connections between Brady and the Dalai Lama. They're roughly the same age. And then also
body types.
Also, they are pliable. That's true. But the Dalai Lama is actually, I think, soon announcing Dali coin, which the emblem is just a monk doing a kissy.
It's going to moon.
Dali coin is going to the moon, and hopefully we hear some news from Brady in the same light. I do think FTX is considering listing it, which will be big, I think, for both parties. So just wanted to kind of call that out. Any of our listeners, if they want to get in early, probably a smart move.
I think it's a great call out. I think I'd be shocked if it's not the way Doge was the Twitter logo recently.
Mhm.
If Dolly Coin is not the logo from Harry Balls soon, that would be pretty surprising. I know he changed his name back in recent hours, but Elon Musk, aka Harry Balls, I would be shocked if he doesn't make his overarching Twitter avatar for all of us the Dolly Coin.
You mean his Titter avatar? I think he also changed.
Yes, pardon me. The
Titter.
W is whited out now. I forgot about that. Thank you for correcting me there. Good fact check.
Titters.
And in fantasy, you have starting pitchers, you have relief pitchers, and you have titters.
Slutters.
Yes.
That's
Forget
actually
the sweeper. Forget the sweeper.
Yeah,
the slutter
that's actually,
is the new naming convention.
I did a deep dive on Jose Barrios. That's actually why I picked him up. I'm kind of out on him, but I did notice, this is not a joke actually, he has a pretty good slutter. It's good. His fastball sucks. His fastball has been his issue. People just hit dingers off of it all the time. It's awful. But his slutter, it's still like at the same level as 2019, whatever. He was really good. So
slutter gets everybody bumbled up.
Jose Barrios, keep it up. Work
Go
on that
90% slutter. Stop throwing the fastball.
Yep.
And you could be Cy Young again, maybe.
Cool. Nick, any other call outs, man?
I think I'm good, man. I think mostly my long-term thoughts for our league haven't changed too much. I think I look forward to hopefully in future weeks having some mailbag to bring up right here at the end of it. But this week, you guys did not call in. You did not remote in. We will have to get back to that. Hopefully this is strike one. If there's 3 straight strikes with no mailbag, we will scrap the mailbag and I will write my own letters that we'll read and I'll pretend they're from you guys and they're going to be not nice probably. And there'll probably be things that me and Kyle want to talk about that are less kind to your teams.
Yeah, so all of our listeners, apologies for the last segment. I know it's probably pretty redundant. This is usually what you hear on most baseball podcasts. We'll typically, the current events, we'll spice it up in the future. We will mostly keep it to our league, as always. This is probably the last video where we'll both be on video-wise.
You will not see us.
So we will bring on a guest next time, and they'll be front and center. If you do want to be a guest, please reach out. We do have a long queue waiting.
We have a couple people in the queue right now. But just as far as scheduling goes, me and Kyle at specific nights and days we can do this. So It is a little bit of a hard thing to schedule around. So let us know you're available. We can try to get you on if you may jump the queue.
Perfect. Cool. Well, Nick, thank you as always. This is always a highlight of the week. And
sure.
Thank you for leading it again. I appreciate it.
I love you.
Love you. All right. Bye-bye.
I love